Hi, everyone. Welcome to this evening's workshop on one of my favorite subjects, which is cleansing, because it's one of the most important gifts that we can give ourselves. So I thought, unfortunately, I can't really see you, so forgive me. I love for us to have an interactive experience. And so what I would usually love to do before we do any talk is to really just center ourselves, because when we come into a container, into a space like this where we're learning and we're exchanging and we're evolving, it's like setting an intention, setting a space. So for me, I light a candle and close the room away from every disturbance. And then secondly, as mostly we're women here, it's nice to check in and see where we are in our cycle. Now, I'm sure maybe not everybody knows where they are on their cycle, and maybe you're going through a different change. And if you are going through a change, then because life can seem erratic and there's a lot of changes that you will be witnessing, it's really nice to check in with the moon. And whatever phase of the moon is a really good anchor for you, because it's such an important anchor for us. And since we are talking about seasonal living, that's exactly what living within our bodies teaches us. It teaches us about anxiety, our sleep rhythms. If we're feeling a little bit juicy, we're feeling a little bit anxious. So I can't hear you, unfortunately, but I thought I would just share. I'm on day 6 of my cycle, so I've just finished bleeding. I do have a bit of energy, hence why I'm ready to speak to you and host this workshop. And also, but there is a bit of anxiety that I'm acknowledging as well, maybe if it's because of world events and things like this, or coming into the end of the year, there's almost always so much expectation. So I'm just acknowledging that within myself. So I invite you to also take a moment of acknowledging where you are, what day you are on. And then if you haven't done this before, start to investigate that process too. And I always think it's much nicer to write it down somewhere with creative freehand rather than texting too, because it gives us a different experience, more subtle, unconscious information will arise. So anyway, back onto topic, but it is also related. So why do we cleanse with each season, or why is it so important? Well, just as nature is going through a huge environmental change and transformation, so is our internal system, and we are a part of the microcosm, which is the macrocosm. We're not separate. And the microbiome also changes seasonally, so it's really important to honor that. And then when we adapt with the seasons is based on how we transition with the seasons, so we can prevent picking up every virus or cold and flu. It just builds our resilience. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Natalie Smythe. I'm a naturopath, nutritionist, meditation, yoga practitioner. So I've been in this field for a really long time, experimenting actually, since I was 15. And now I've been in clinical practice now for 10 years, seeing one-to-one clients and group coaching. So I suppose my journey and how I personally became really connected with cleansing and detoxification is whistle stop tour, suffered all of those horrible eating disorders, which are very common amongst us. And then I went through that, but then I really, in my late teens, early 20s, I really experienced chronic fatigue and this like a no energy, lethargy, and missing really my spark for life. Got it back again, moved to London, but then I put on a lot of weight and it came back again. And when I moved to London 15 years ago, there was no naturopaths, no yoga that I had experienced from Australia. So I was on the quest to find the answer, and luckily I came across a naturopath. I had to have a phone call in Australia, and she really put me on this naturopathic diet, which is eating with the seasons, and really some subtle practices that I swear by today. But then I noticed that I needed half the amount of sleep. I wasn't experiencing anxiety, and I had a lot more energy. So that was life changing. And then the second part was that I did my genome test. And now, when you're experiencing with health, you know that you have epigenetics and your genetics load the gun, and then your environment pulls the trigger. So for me personally, I have a family history of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, not so much, not too many cases of cancer. But anyway, my genes came back that I had an epigenetic SNP on my phase 2 detoxification gene, which we will certainly go and talk about. So that means that my liver wasn't cleansing enough of the environmental toxins that I was facing. So no wonder I was experiencing kind of like a wayward hormones, and I wasn't able to rest or sleep or rejuvenating enough because the enzymes kept circulating in my blood rather than excreting through my digestion, skin, kidneys, or urine. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think that was the catalyst for me. And I've always held that information. So enough about me. Let's get on to you and see how you can transform your health. So essentially, what I believe a toxin is anything that stands in the way from your full potential. And that can be an emotional block, because emotional blocks and situations and behaviors can really change what we do and how we feed ourselves. And they create blocks in the road too of boundaries with other people too. So that can really change your life. Obviously, a food and the certain environment that we're faced with all of the time too. And yeah, anything that is putting you in flow with feeling your best too. So what we're going to speak about is obviously why it's the perfect time to focus on this. Learn about the different pathways of your liver, which I briefly alluded to, and learn how to support your body through the different symptoms. And feeling confident, preventing aging. I'm all about preventing, increasing longevity, changing our biological age. The power really is in us and our habits. So I can't go any further without really talking about how our whole health is a complex web. We're not we're not based on certain symptoms, but there was always a root cause, and everything is certain connected. So I spoke about how our environment really impacts this. So it's based on how we sleep, how we relax, exercise, and movement. If you came to me and asked me what are the critical factors that you could do for your health, it's movement and breath, because movement really transforms and moves your nutrients. It creates BDNF, neurotrophic factor. So it's changing neuro pathways. It's increasing oxytocin, increasing serotonin. So just from doing movement alone. And I know if we're experiencing anxiety or depression, they're the last things that we want to do. So we have to really decrease that inflammation, and that alludes me to stress. And also relationships impact our health and our way of being so much. And so then we have this genetic predisposition as well too, which I spoke about. And then usually what happens here is sedents, triggers, and mediators. So say, for example, all of a sudden you experience this life-changing chronic moment where you can't get out of bed, you're experiencing rashes and a lot of headaches, but you've never experienced that before, and all of a sudden it comes out of the blue. Or you start eating pasta and now you're getting inflamed, but you've always been able to eat pasta or drink alcohol or eat chocolate. What happens is disease doesn't happen overnight. It's a progression of behaviors and symptoms that we do to our body. So we can always track it back. There's always a timeline. And so suddenly what happens is maybe you got a virus which took you over the edge, which brought about this inflammatory cascade. And that's when we're experiencing these signs and symptoms. So we can see that our structural integrity, our membranes, our body is connected to our lymphatic system, which is connected to our energy, which is connected to our endocrine system, which is how we mediate our blood sugar levels for energy, and then that connects to our immune system, how we heal, what if we're experiencing any inflammation or gut dysbiosis, and then how that connects to our absorption, how we absorb our nutrients and turn that into to energy, and our digestion, and how we move all of these toxins out of our system. So I hope that makes sense. It's basically a complex web, and it's all about becoming the detective of your life and picking up on your bodily cues, because your body is always messaging you, and the louder the symptom, it's just knocking on you to pay attention. But unfortunately, time is a factor, isn't it? And we don't have time, and we have pharmacy and green pharmacy, which doesn't allow us to rest. But if we just allowed space and time to rest and digest and relax, and I think that's what cleansing allows us to do as well. So, cleansing, detoxification, the practices have been since the inception of time. We have water fast, we have 5-2, intermittent fasting, religious fasting, so it's happened historically in every religious text that we have. And essentially what it allows us to do, well, in religious times, it would allow us to connect with God or our higher selves, which it certainly does. And then unfortunately, we do have a bit of a food addictive culture, because we stuff our emotions. We don't actually allow ourselves to feel. News, media, food, they're all taking us away from ourselves. And so we've moved beyond that theory of, like, if you don't have breakfast, you're going to die, basically. We know evidence is suggesting that that certainly is not the case. So we're coming back to that natural state as well. And so cleansing gives the body time to heal. And then, as you notice, when we're ill, we naturally lose our appetite, because then all of our natural killer cells, our immune cells, everything is going to the site of infection. And if it eats, it has to go and spend 50% of its energy on digestion. Don't get me wrong, you obviously have to take precautionary measures. If it's a different illness, you have to keep up your fluids and your electrolytes. It's very important. So essentially, what is eating? Like, when I cook for myself, it's always for medicine. But when I go out with friends, I will always enjoy myself, obviously ensuring that it's like made with good quality. But eating is to restore the alkalinity of our tissues. Like, our tissues are like this plump, beautiful cells that receive and give off energy. But what happens is, over time, just eating everything, being surrounded by our environment and chemicals, it becomes sticky. So you want the viscosity of our blood to be like this beautiful fluidness, like we are. We are 80% water too, and our blood moves through us and carries through all of this information. And so we always want to be making sure that we're eating organic, live, bioavailable foods. You go into the supermarket and only 10% is live and live, organic, living food. And usually the fruit and vegetables actually isn't live or live living foods, because it was harvested, so it was picked before it was able to take in the sunshine, take in all of those phytonutrients. So actually, the fruit and vegetables, the produce in the supermarket, has only about 30% of the nutrients that you would find from the farmers market. So it's like supporting our local farmers is really important too, because we can see and witness the health of everybody living in cities versus in countrysides. And so you really want to be removing those foods that promote that acidic weight. So don't shop in the middle of your supermarket aisles, because everything's filled with E numbers, with, we have the oil and gas industry has been going for almost 100 years. So where do they have to put their byproducts? Gasoline is in Vaseline. And a lot of those E numbers are put in our food, the plastics, the rubber and things. So it's not okay. So obviously, how is this a transition? Now, especially with autumn time, is a wonderful time to, it's like, well, even spring, we have our spring cleaning and we have our autumn cleaning too, because what happens is we're about to go a little bit internal. We're about to go a little bit slower, preparing for the winter time as well. We've just moved away from the summer, was it's the height of fire season. So we were eating a lot more, 80% like live fruits and vegetables. And now our digestive fire becomes a little bit more internal. So we want to build the heat for ourselves. We're going to be spending a lot more time indoors, like I said. So air ventilation is really important in our homes, and now very toxic. All of our furniture has retardants on it too. Like dust contains a lot of heavy metals in it, so it's so important that you really start dusting and opening your windows where possible. If you can't open your windows, then really I would suggest investing in an air ventilator too, so we can remove all of the virus, fungus, bacteria. Wash your pillows, check the bedding, flip the bedding. That's really important. And then as well, oral hygiene. We always forget about oral hygiene, but your digestion starts in your mouth too, because then in our gums, see, they're a membrane which connect all the way down to your vagus nerve, and all the way into your gut, into your heart. Actually, there's a lot of evidence that gum disease, there's a correlation between gum disease and cardiovascular disease for that reason. So I would start by changing your toothbrush, obviously. And then one of my favorite things to do, and there wasn't evidence on this for a long time, but now there is something called oil pulling. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it is you take a teaspoon of coconut or sesame oil, and then you swish it around your mouth for 15 minutes, ideally. And when I say that to people, they think that's crazy, but I'm all about multitasking. I'm all about efficiency. So as soon as you wake up in the morning, put your teaspoon of oil in, have your shower, dry yourself, check your emails, whatever you need to do. Rinse it in the toilet, not in the sink, because that clogs up the sink. And then make sure you have another swish out and brush your teeth. And that's very helpful. And then my second practice, which is relatively new for me, but I just learnt this off one of my teachers, is what's called a soul solution. And essentially, you have this is filled with a cup of water, and then you fill it with a quarter of not Epsom salts, Himalayan salts, because Himalayan salts, make sure that it's a true variety, have 82 essential minerals in them, trace minerals in them, which we are missing now from our soil. So it's really important to get it into salts and seaweeds. It's very important. And so what you do, then you shake it up, and then you leave it to settle overnight, and then the quarter of the salt transmutes into the water, and you have this little residual particles down here. So now there's a lot of incredible evidence that salt has its own microbiome, which is super cool, and then mixed with our own microbiome. So what I do is take a teaspoon in the morning and in the evening and swish it around your mouth, and then try to gargle. Now, it can be very pungent, but I just had actually someone write to me and said that they've been doing it for a week, and they just have so much more energy and they feel a lot cleaner, and their mouth hygiene feels better. And she suggested it to her mum. So that's a great tip, instead of mouthwashes, because all mouthwashes are carcinogenic. So I would remove all of those immediately. And then also for hydration. So another one about hydration. Hydration is super important, particularly with the change in season as well. That, you'll drink maybe a liter and a half, 2 liters, whatever your recommendation is for your body, but maybe you don't feel hydrated because unfortunately our tap water has a lot of chemicals in it too. So it doesn't match our cells. Remember, we are organic living being, macrocosm, microcosm. So how is something from the tap with chemicals going to match our energetic response. It doesn't. So the constitution of our blood is made of these electrolytes, sodium, magnesium, and such, and so is salt water. So I would put a teaspoon of the salt in my glass of water and drink that, and make sure you have your electrolytes. So that was a big whistle stop tour there. So what is a toxin? We have two varieties of toxins. We have xenobiotics, so xeno outside, and so that's all foreign substances that are not natural in your body, and they're involved in your normal metabolism. So unfortunately, in the last 50 years, there is just a vast amount of chemicals that have been created. And then we are absorbing them through inhalation, through our digesting, and then through our skin. Our skin is the largest organ of our body. We are almost like this tissue cells, and then our skin like a water soup, and then our skin holds us into this water membrane that we are. And so all of the products that we are putting on our skin are going directly into our bloodstream. So just think about that. So it's so important. I know it's really difficult for women. There are so many products, and we are sold. We live in a capitalistic society, so that's the way that we drive our market value. So just really question all of the products that you are putting on your body, and if you are putting chemicals on your body, just ask yourself, how are you removing them, because they store in your tissues. And the thing about chemicals is they actually store in fat too. So if you are somebody that maybe can't shift any extra pounds, it may be because the toxic enzymes, which we call endocrine disruptors, embed themselves in your body. And then I know you'll hear a lot in social media, or even from your doctor as well, saying that your body's an incredible machine. It detoxes and cleanses everything. Yes, your body is absolutely remarkable. I am the first to say that. But unfortunately, as highlighted here, and we haven't even documented all of the chemicals and toxins that we're coming into face with, is that it's just too much for our bodies, and our bodies aren't evolutionizing as swiftly enough. And so then we have the endotoxins. So these are the substances that our body makes too. So these include estrogen, and if it hasn't gone through your liver properly enough with enough of the enzymes, then it circulates through your bloodstream, and then it creates more metabolic waste too. If you're experiencing any inflammation in your gut, for example, your gut is made up of millions and millions of fungi, bacteria, virus, good and bad, but a lot of the time the bad one will create their own enzymes, and then that causes and creates a whole allergic inflammatory cascade, which adds and builds into these chemicals as well. So here is a little bit about your liver, and I hope this isn't too technical, but it just lays out everything. And this is kind of what I spoke about in the beginning of how my relationship with liver detoxification. So what happens is you have your toxins come in. It can be from the outside, or as your inside body reactions. And what happens when they come into your liver is they're in this fat. They're fat soluble. So they go through step 1 of your liver, and all of your B vitamins, all of your nutrients are needed to break this down to go into phase 2, so it can turn into a water soluble. Now, what I mentioned earlier in my case, and which is actually very common, is that I didn't have enough enzymes that were able to make the fat soluble toxin into a water soluble. So what happens is it all gets backed up here. And so, as I said, all of these organisms, pollutants, insecticides, pesticides, food additives, drugs too, if we're taking too many NSAIDs, or if we're on medication, really remember that any painkiller that you take builds and adds up to that toxicity and can create a lot of inflammation in your gut too. So with all of our natural enzymes that we have, it breaks it down to a water-soluble form. And remember, cleansing happens in 5 different ways. So it happens through the gallbladder, through your bile, moves it through to secrete into your bowel too. So that's why bowel movements is so important. And then obviously through your kidneys, through the secretions of your hydration and your sodium, urine, and then obviously your skin is an important, incredible factor for cleansing. So sweating is so important. So hopefully that makes sense there. I'm just seeing if I see any comments there. Yeah, so all of this impacts how so your sleep, recovery from exercise, how you deal with sensitivity of chemicals, um, how you experience PMS, your hormones, how you if you experience more skin like acne and so forth. And then obviously this just builds up and creates chronic diseases in the long term as well. So here as well, so I've just given you that information, but here is kind of just like a checklist of things that you can answer that really breaks it down. So we have the methylation pathway, we have phase 1, and then we have phase 2 of that liver. So how do you know if you have poor methylation, and what is methylation? So you might have heard of, like, there's, again, going back to the genes, there's a gene mutation called MTHFR, and that affects your body's methylation process. So your ability to create active B vitamins, and you would have heard of like folate, how some people can't make folate, and about 25% of the population carries this mutation. So basically it's a biochemical process that controls your ability to detox and lower inflammation and produce your neurotransmitters. So it's really important. And then, as I said, some people have this and some people don't. And it's so maybe take a picture of this. But yeah, symptoms of low mood and forgetfulness, that's very common. So you would have to answer about 5 of these. If vegetarianism is just because protein is a big factor, so it's just making sure that you get your whole complete your protein sources. Protein is very, very important for detoxification because it adds on that pathway. So say, for example, someone is doing like a juice fast, and you will obviously feel better from this because you're giving your digestive system a big break, and you're just having like phytochemicals, phytonutrients, vitamins. But then after a while, it won't work because then you don't have the protein and the essential enzymes to cleave out and turn it from fatty soluble form to water soluble form. And so if you are someone that experiences inflammatory disease, you have a sensitivity to smells of like perfume smells and so forth, you've had disruption with fertility, you really experience imbalance of hormones and that endometriosis picture. This one's a big one, obviously, Alzheimer's, dementia, cardiovascular disease, family history, and then you can certainly get tested at your doctor. And there's obviously a lot to do, but so if you were to supplement, you would want to be supplementing with methylated B vitamins and B6. But the emphasis on there is having your magnesium, your zinc, your protein, which are the precursors, and having a whole food diet there is important. And then here as well, if you do become sensitive to cosmetics, perfumes, you live in a city, our pollution, particularly where I'm based in London, is we have cadmium in there, and I'm actually a cyclist. I had a iridology appointment in France, actually, and he asked me if I was a smoker. I said, no, I've never smoked before. And well, he said, okay, where do you live? Because it's really common that people from the city have this like inflammation over their lungs. So if you are a cyclist or you work really closely in the city, it's really important to do sauna therapy, because that actually has been shown to remove carcinogen and certain heavy metals. Organic produce really is important, I'm afraid, and if you can't afford it, which it is very expensive now, is just make sure that you wash your fruit and vegetables in 1/4 cup vinegar and bicarbonate of soda, or I have one of those fruit and veggie sprays which lasts you like years. Having the brassicas are really important based on those enzymes. there. So I'm just going to let you have a look at those, and please tell me your results as well, because I'm just cautious of time. This kind of piece just sums it up too. Smoking, caffeine, alcohol, polypharmacy. If we're not doing things to remove them, then it does become a big problem. And again, I'm just giving you a bit more information to explain how all of this pieces together. So, the xenoestrogens from chemicals, from plastics in our self-care products, is our tampons, our pads, all have plastics in them, which is, not okay. And so I know this can be overwhelming. So just choose a couple of things that you will do this month to just make the change, because it's a long-term progression. I say to my clients and all the time, I have made these changes over a long time, because otherwise we set ourselves up for failure. Digestion really creates this piece of the enzymatic response there. Stress, sleep is a big one. I know we know this, but we really want to get into our deep alpha replenished sleep. And if we're toxic or overloaded, it's impossible to get there. Okay, so what can we do? That's the most important thing, right? So remember, firstly, though, it's all about making the 20% change for the 80% difference. There are so many things that are out of our control. So this is not to cause fear or overwhelm. That is numero uno. Small, progressive implements makes the long difference. Otherwise, we just set up ourselves for failure. Okay, so I've highlighted the ones that are important for you to pay attention of. So I always say eat the rainbow. And what does that mean? It means that you're incorporating every single phytochemical, nutrition, every single color that is in all of your produce, your fruit and vegetables, is feeding a particular part, an enzyme and biochemical change in your body. So we can either eat for disease or we can eat for health. We can either eat for longevity, and we can change our biological age instead of our calendar age. How cool is that? We have the power to do that. And so I would say a big one here is that if you do cook with meat and so forth, it's just like, how do we cook with our meat? What are we cooking in too? Are we cooking in a Teflon pan? Okay. Maybe that's one big change that you can do. Remove the Teflon pans that are covered in plastic chemical linings, which just end up disrupting your hormones, and that you can change to stainless steel. Or there's a few other pans on the cast iron pans are really great for that. And so, in traditional cultures, they bathe their proteins in turmerics and different herbs and spices too, because that defers the charcoaling effect, which promotes AGEs and inflammation in our body. So we always want to be sure that we can speak to the butchers and the farmers where we're getting our produce from. They're not battery fed, because they have omega-3 in them, which is so important to our brain health and our omega-3 balance too. Increasing in protein is really important when it comes to our liver and detoxification. So there's so many things that you can do for vegetarian and vegan, but just making sure that you are getting those qualities and not carb loading. So if digestion is a problem, so if you're getting any acid reflux and things, or you are getting bloating or pain, digestive enzymes are really important and can make a really profound difference too. Remember, digestion starts here. It actually starts with the smell. So, when you smell things, you get the digestive amylase going as well. So that's why in a lot of Mediterranean culture, they first start with their rocket, their bitters. Even an aperitif is made with like herbal bitters, which starts that process in our mouth. That's why chewing really starts that process too. So another takeaway would be to sit down and enjoy your food and start chewing your food for 20 chews. And then reducing intake of caffeine if you are sensitive, you don't sleep, or you get anxiety there. Optimal food storage, and saying no to peanuts because they contain mold in them too. So, and then I touched on this, but really having an overhaul of your cleaning products in the home, your what you're washing your clothes with as well, and then also being aware of your clothes. A lot of them have the polyesters, the microplastics. So instead of washing on high heat, because when we have heat, that's when the plastics distribute too, which is not okay. So the EWG Environmental Working Group has great resources there, and you can certainly ask me any questions about what my favourite products are too. So everything starts in the gut, but also it's important because that's how we digest our food, turning into nutrition, therefore energy. So we should be revitalized after we eat. I know sadly that's not the case. So we want to support like that bile, because that helps with our stools, removing the fibrous tissue. So things like artichoke is such a great superfood too. If you can't get the food, take some drops. Improving peristalsis. So your colon naturally has this like the rhythm. So movement is so important. It has a natural rhythm. So movement, daily exercise is one of the biggest things that you can do for your health. Peppermint if you're not sensitive. And so hydration is really important to build that stool as well. So making sure that you have soluble and insoluble fiber. Prunes are really are being rebranded now as dried plums because they had such a bad reputation, but I love prunes. And then so the dietary fibers as well really bind the plastics and the pollutants there. So it really so important to get those bowel habits going. And if you do get a little bit stuck with your bowel habits, particularly since we're sitting, so we're in this like position, we're not moving, and so we can never, like our body is not doing what it used to do to be in the right position. So one of my favorite tips nowadays is sitting in a squat as well, because that helps with mobility of your joints, your hips, your spine. It's just wonderful. And drinking a warm cup of water will really start that. And then if you are looking at probiotics, you would want to have a look at Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria. Okay, so and then I told you this, but the gut microbiome changes seasonally. And why is that important? Because we can see now, for example, in the UK, or if we're in the Northern Hemisphere, apple and pears now, they've been on the trees, they've had all the soils, they've had the sunlight, they've had the photosynthesis from the sun. So they are ripe and full with all of the nourishment. Same with pumpkin and squashes. And so they're so rich in polyphenols, these prebiotics, these fibers. Brussels sprouts are so wonderful. And then my favorite is the is the broccoli sprouts. The Hippocrates Center, based in Florida, is actually a natural healing cancer clinic. But unfortunately, people that end up there are they've tried everything, and then they finally try it the natural way. But the doctor that started it, he suggests and recommends in all the protocols that they have broccoli sprouts for the high content of sulforaphane, which supports that phase 2 detoxification. And they have about a cup a day, and there's transformative effects there, particularly if you're experiencing, hormones, PMS and things. It's a really good one. My favorite is I can't remove this little thing. You can't see the slide, can you? It's the artichokes. Jerusalem artichokes. They are in season, and they are a prebiotic powerhouse. So prebiotics helps grow our good bacteria, our friendly bacteria, microbiome, collection of everything. And so that's why I don't suggest always supplementing with probiotics, because the maximum you can usually get is 50 billion, and we have billions. So we always want to be having the prebiotics to build our own bacteria. And then natural berries, the blackberries and the blueberries are so rich in polyphenols, so good for you, so good for your brain health. One of the best things that you can eat. So, and then here is like we want to always, if we want to support ourselves, we want to prevent disease and so forth, is the antioxidants. They prime the body. And so here is we want to increase the water soluble vitamins. So we have water soluble vitamins and we have fat soluble vitamins. So water soluble vitamins, obviously, they disappear when we sweat, when we with urine and so forth. And fat soluble, we always have to be careful at supplementing with those because it's fat, so it stays in our body longer. So I'm not going to recommend any supplements because I haven't spoken to you. So I'm just going to suggest food sources, but certainly email me with any questions and we can go from there. So vitamin C, vitamin E, the catechins from green tea is very good to help your epigenetic level of your liver. And then the cofactors of your enzymes to increase glutathione levels. Glutathione is a master antioxidant, and unfortunately, it starts depleting from the age of 30. So we really want to make sure that those levels are really high with these cofactors here. That is selenium, zinc, copper. And so cysteine as well is really important. So that's that supplemental form of glutathione, and so you can get that in your soft boiled eggs, or you can supplement there. But again, I'm not going to suggest anything until you've spoken with somebody. And then ginkgo biloba helps. There's been some great results there with restoring our antioxidant levels there. And so we really want to be increasing our phytonutrients. And so what that does is it stimulates our phase 2 enzyme expression. I've spoken a lot about this so much, but phytonutrients are so important because they're our biochemical constituents of plant-based foods that are thought to promote human health. So in the last 50 years, we've talked about our classical nutrients so the cows come home: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, which are essential to life, for our building blocks, and they're required for the growth of our biological tissues. But so the phytonutrients appear to support human health by protecting against diseases that would develop from consequence environmental exposure. So that's how we have this flurry of chronic disease. We don't have the biological diseases so much anymore, but it's this chronic disease picture because we are not getting enough of these into our diet. And so we really want to make sure that we have our lycopene, which is really great for men, and our adrenals to cook tomatoes, turmeric. So really spreading turmeric in all of your foods if you can, but be careful because about 30% of the population as well have reverse effects to it. So notice what you experience afterwards. The catechins in green tea, I just spoke about broccoli sprouts, caffeic acid from coffee, making sure it's organic and that you know where it's come from, because coffee can carry mold too, which is detrimental to our health. Our berries are really important then. And then my favorite, what I've always been having for such a long time, is I swear by green powders for myself, for my clients' health. My mum started having it before she had me and still has it now until she's in her almost 70, and she looks not an age beyond 50, and I can swear by it too. So it's the chlorella that really cleanses the blood because it takes in the sunlight. It's that photosynthesis, and the studies now sharing that it is kind of like the same pigment as our blood too. Sorry for the whistle top tour. We're going really quickly, but I want to keep you energized. So here, I would love to just share with you my little hacks too that I always swear by and really help. We've spoken a lot about these, but I would just take a picture of these and highlight to you that beetroot is really important. Beetroot is so important because it raises nitric oxide too. So it actually has been shown in studies to increase physical performance and in short-term running by a couple of seconds, which is pretty huge. Radishes, I swear by radishes, particularly for women and hormones, balancing that. Your sulfur, great for that phase 2 there. High fiber, garlic family. Artichoke, we've spoken about. Dandelion, dandelion root too. It's wide all around our world. And they say in herbal medicine is that look at the plants that grow wildly around you, because that's generally the medicine that you need. And that seems to be true since we're going through this endemic of liver problems with detoxification and all of these chronic environmental diseases. And I was looking through my mother's old Mrs. Beaton's cookbook, which is the original one, and she even has recipes of dandelion. So make it come back in fashion, I say. And then milk thistle too. What milk thistle does, and you hear it a lot in like health food stores, it's to take it for a hangover. What it does, it actually protects your liver rather than helping with those phases that I've spoken about a lot. Okay. Now, so we've spoken about what we can do on the inside, but elimination goes through the kidneys and it goes through the skin. So I touched on the hydration is really important, having electrolytes. Magnesium is really important, replacing your salt. There's always been such a negative word with salt. That's just the table salt that we have, which again is man-made. So we really want to be making sure that we're ingesting salt, whether it's Himalayan salt coming from the right source, sustainably, obviously, or we have, Celtic salt too, which has all of those beautiful magnesium and minerals, and really adding it liberally to your diet is really important. Increasing your natural diuretics too. Alfalfa, celery seed is really great. Alfalfa sprouts, similar to broccoli sprouts. And then one of my favorite things to do, and it's just such a great one with stress, if you don't have time to exercise, and if you do live in a city, it's so vital. It's hydrotherapy or cold and hot baths, cold and hot showers, and sauna therapy too. And so the science now is based on hormesis, which is giving your body a little bit of a stressor to create an acute healing response. And so with saunas now, there's incredible evidence saying that it can remove the heavy metals like the cadmium that I mentioned in myself personally and with clients. There's been brilliant results there too. And then Dr. Myhill suggests advocating saunas if you are like so depleted and don't have that energy with chronic fatigue, but obviously building up. Obviously, we don't do this when we're pregnant or we have cardiovascular disease or any chronic disease or on medication. Always check with a healthcare provider. And then also skin brushing. I swear by and I do my skin brushing whilst I'm oil pulling in the morning, a couple of times a week, just round circles towards your heart, and that helps in shedding the buildup of anything that we come in response with. And lymphatic drainage is really good, particularly in the change of season, our lymph nodes and so forth. So our lymph nodes are here, so just massaging those underneath, or just your clavicle bone here, giving that a nice massage. And then under here, we have all of our nodes too, like where our breasts are, and that's where our deodorant goes. So making sure that your deodorant is non-toxic, and then giving yourself a massage there. So I put some deodorant on, and then under your knees, and then in your hips. So giving everything a nice massage there, because you'll notice sometimes if you are inflamed, it can feel inflamed there. And just touching again, I mentioned movement, but movement is so important, and particularly with women, we've now are seeing in the studies that women that focus more on resistance training or lifting weights and things like that have a better experience going into perimenopause and menopause, because people that exercise more attain more cellular water as well. So that's a really important one to note too. And yeah, so we've come to the end now. I hope my whistle stop tour was okay. But the purpose of our lives is really to find this balance with ourselves. And I think, and I feel, what I've come to know with cleansing, it's just a way to have a deeper relationship with yourselves, to really listen to your body, because your body is always giving you clues, like the messages that it gives you. If you're tired after you've eaten, if you have a headache, are you dehydrated? Is there a hormone imbalance? Is it toxins? everything. If you have a rash on your skin, what is that showing you? If you have a hangover, what is that showing you? If you have PMS, what is that showing you? If you're angry, what is that showing you? If there's anxiety, what is it showing you? And I hope this hasn't been too overwhelming because I've given you lots of information, but all I would just ask from all of this is that you just take 4 takeaways that you can introduce, and so that you can realize that you are the microcosm of the macrocosm, and that everything is connected. And so if we believe in ourselves and really step into the power that we are vehicles and vesicles for change, and we find our purpose, and that purpose is being the best, maybe wife, husband, teacher, mother, or whatever your career is, we can live our lives and create ripples of change. And the world needs it right now for you to be the best version of yourself. So thank you so much for your time. And I've just decided, because I haven't done my seasonal cleanse, and I thought, oh, it would be fun to do it with some people. So I'm just going to start one in the next week. I'll send you some more details of it, but I just want it to be a nice, intimate group where we can really share, and I can help you through all of maybe your challenges or anything that you're experiencing. So I will send you the details there. If you don't join me this time, that's okay. But I'll be doing another webinar coming up soon. In the next 2 weeks, I'll send you the details, and that is about how to read supplemental labels, because I always get so many marketing of supplements and things, and I just want people to understand what's rubbish and what's not rubbish. Okay, God bless. Thank you.